So students, the role of social media has occupied a central place in any discussion on the media in contemporary societies. Let's quickly take a look at what is it that we have to learn within this theme. So first and foremost, let's start off with a simple description of social media. Social media refers to media websites and apps that are based on internet technology and enable the development of social networks. So if we were to describe and define the social media, we can say that this is consisting of media websites and apps that are based on internet technology. The use of the internet in this case is something which is central to social media. Reason is because social media has emerged out of the digital revolution, as has been discussed in the previous video. And the purpose, so to speak, or the main role that the social media performs is the development of social networks. So this is basically what is something which is a central role of the social media. So we can say that social media technologies are all a part of new media technologies. So as I discussed in my video on the digital revolution, contemporary discussions on media happen to be classified in terms of what is called the old media and the new media. When we talk about the old media, we are primarily talking about traditional forms of media. For example, the print newspapers, magazines, radio transmission, television transmission, and Hollywood films, for example. But when we are talking about new media technologies, we are primarily talking about those technologies which are based on internet technology and those which offer us more advanced features of accessibility as compared to the one directional communication that used to take place through the traditional media. One important feature of new media technologies is that these are interactive. So you can be able to write down comments, for example, underneath a newspaper article when you're accessing it over the internet. But this would obviously not be possible when you are reading a print newspaper. This is just an example to explain to you one of the major differences between the old media and the new media. Now, examples of social media are Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and so on. Some sociologists say, while they are discussing the importance of the new forms of media and particularly social media, that we are now living in a media saturated society. What is meant by a media saturated society? Basically, the idea that we are literally surrounded by the media and it is a central part of our social life. So, an important point to be able to place in any discussion on social media, or for that matter, generally speaking, digital media in contemporary societies, is this idea that we are living in a media saturated society. So, now let's take a look at the role of social media. Now, we can be able to analyze the role of social media by utilizing what we have learned in the earlier part of the sociology discussions on the media. We can be able to apply, for example, the functionalist view of media functions and be able to see how we can utilize the social media for gaining information, for example, news. We can be able to gain entertainment from the use of social media. For example, Netflix is a good example of entertainment using digital technology. Nowadays, you may want to talk about YouTube, for example. Then the media in this particular dimension of social media can also be utilized for socialization purposes, which basically means the transmission of norms and values of the society, and how children, for example, learn from different types of posts or different types of programs on social media. And along with this, the mobilization function can also take place. So, for example, nowadays we see the effective use of social media in terms of the mobilization function. For example, there are a number of posts on Facebook, or for example, a number of video clips which are shared on social media apps about how to be able to protect ourselves from the coronavirus outbreak. But along with this, an important role of social media is in the development of online identities. So, this happens to be a central theme within the discussion on the role of social media. How social media allows us to go online, as we say. So, we are interacting with other individuals in cyberspace. And as we learned in the previous video, that this is in disembodied form. So there is a central role of social media in the development of what are called online identities. An important reference that you can be able to bring in the discussion on the development of online identities is Sherry Turkle, whose book is Life on the Screen: Identity in the Age of the Internet. This happens to be one of the important early publications about how life on the screen, which means our online identity, was of a specific type, and what is it that this type of a new identity entailed, and so on. This was explained by Sherry Turkle. Now, the explanation of Sherry Turkle about online identities suggests that the most important aspect, the most significant aspect of a person's internet identity relates to its anonymity. So the idea that I can be online and I can be able to hide my true identity because my name is not known to people, or my real identity is hidden from the people when I am interacting with others, let's suppose over an online forum, or for that matter over social media applications, is something which is the most significant aspect of a person's online identity. Now, describes situations anonymity describes situations where the acting person's name is unknown. So even though, generally speaking, when we are talking about anonymity, we are talking about the name being unknown, but we can also see this in a more wider matter, by the way, in a more wider dimension, so to speak, how not only may the person's name be unknown, but rather also this idea that the overall true identity, so to speak, can be hidden over the internet. So this is something which is mentioned over here as well, that on the internet, we are able to disguise certain aspects of our real identities, such as our age, our racial background, our gender. God forbid if somebody is disabled, so the element of disability, which could hamper, so to speak, the interaction of an individual with others during normal social life, or for that matter, within some societies or within some groups in societies, there could be judgments about the potential or the talent or the ability of a person who is disabled. All of this can be hidden. All of this can be what is being called here disguised. So basically, we can see how, for example, in a face-to-face situation within a patriarchal society, uh, females may not be able to voice their concerns against males, let's suppose, about matters like harassment at work, or for that matter, about receiving unequal pay in their professional life. But when we are able to disguise aspects of our real identities online, then we can be able to gain a certain voice which may not be available to us within real social life. So we see how it has been explained that we can hide those aspects of our identities that label us as members of minority groups, which enable us to become part of mainstream society. So, for example, in real life, if an individual is a part of a racial minority group, or is a part of an ethnic minority group, or, for example, a religious minority group, then this would serve as a kind of a label which could lead to stereotyping against this individual in the overall society. But what happens is that the online identity, it helps us be able to hide these aspects, which enables us to become part of mainstream society. Therefore, we can speak out our views and opinions more openly than in real life. So, on the internet, you can create an online self that differs from your real self. So, this is a very sociologically speaking intriguing point, that how the internet, it enables us to be able to behave or to be able to give an impression to others in cyberspace, for which the term online self has been utilized. And this may significantly differ from our real self in the real life, so to speak. Now, when we go through the guide, it gives us an example of an online identity on Facebook. I'm quite sure that most of you are aware of making this online identity and maintaining this online identity on Facebook. So, it has been told to us how Facebook can be seen as an online space where we can create or display an identity. So you can notice how in this particular discussion, the theme of the digital revolution and the theme of social media is now interacting with the theme of identity, which happens to be a part of Unit 2.1. So there is a process of constructing an online identity. So let's just imagine that we are making a new Facebook profile, and let's see what would be the different steps that we would be taking, which are going to be construction of our online identity. So first and foremost, we would be mentioning some details of our identity. This is going to include the name, our picture, our age, our religious affiliation, our political views, and also our relationship status. So just like in our real identity, there are these important aspects. Similarly, when we are constructing an online identity, there are also these aspects which go into any Facebook profile. But along with that, because the theme of identity does not only have to do with how an individual describes himself or herself, but also in terms of how others see this person. So the online identity can also involve us joining groups, for example, different types of interest groups, different types of hobbies. So you may be following particular pages, for example, which are about particular causes. These could be fan pages of particular celebrities. So in a certain sense, we are giving an impression to others also about who we are by joining groups just like we do in our normal social life. Then the process of constructing an online identity also involves giving an impression to others by posting photos and by posting our status updates. So every time we are taking a selfie, so to speak, or we are posting a status that this is where we are at the moment, let's suppose at a birthday party, or at our convocation. So we are giving an impression to others as well that this is basically how we are. But yet, at the same time, as we discussed in the previous slide as well, that the online identity could at times be quite different than the real identity of an individual in the society. So it is also possible that there can be a false or a fake identity that can be made over social media like Facebook or Twitter. So often we understand that there are issues and concerns about fake accounts on Facebook, for example, or on Twitter, for example, which are examples of fake and false identities. So now that we have discussed about the important role of the social media in, let's suppose, providing information, in entertainment, and also enabling creation of online identities, we can see how, sociologically speaking, the creation of these online identities could be considered to be a form of empowerment that we experience. For example, I have already told you about this idea that we can hide those aspects of our real identity online that might be leading to problems for us in real life interaction. For example, the idea that we belong to some ethnic minority, or for example, within a patriarchal society, that we are a female. But then at the same time, students, please also keep in mind that these online identities and the interaction that we have on social media in general can also have what can be stated as a dark side. So, if I was particularly talking about the idea of online identities, then in this case, one of these aspects is that there can be an identity theft. So, for example, somebody can be able to steal your online identity by taking control of your Facebook account or your Twitter account, for example. And in this case, this person will be behaving in your name. And this can be something which can be quite perplexing and quite problematic for individuals who have experienced an identity theft. Along with that, the online identities, uh, these basically, because they are related to the interaction that we are having on social media, so these can also be involving matters like stalking, for example, people trying to view the profiles or trying to view the personal pictures of other individuals. Along with this, there is a great and increasing concern nowadays about something that is called cyberbullying. So, people who have posted their picture, let's suppose, they may be bullied, or for example, you may have heard about a term called body shaming. Critics online can at times be engaging in shaming of other individuals or bullying of other individuals, and this is something which has also led, sadly speaking, to casualties in various parts of the world where individuals were bullied online. At the same time, as we saw in the previous video as well, when we discussed the study by Reingold on the online forum for parents, which was called the Well, so there can be surveillance by governments as well in terms of the use of social media. Along with this, when we were studying about the unit on crime and the new forms of cybercrime, we also understand that there can be the issue of people breaking into the computers of others and hacking their computers and stealing information and so on. Along with that, one of the perplexing roles of the social media is also related to cyber crime. So there could be instances of money laundering, for example. There could be instances of other types of cyber crime, for example, the trading of illegal drugs that can take place online. Some of you may be familiar with a term that is often being used now nowadays, it is called the dark web. So basically this idea that there is this kind of a secret and a very dark, deep place within the overall internet, where carrying out cyber crime is very easy, and where coordination of matters like hacking, for example, or money laundering, and all of these dark and shady aspects of social life are possible. Along with that, please keep in mind that there is also the issue of fake news on websites, or for that matter, on social media apps like Facebook. So, when you take a look at various news that are shared with us over WhatsApp, for example, or over forums like Facebook and Twitter, much of this news, or for that matter, some of this news, may actually be fake news. So there are increasing concerns about the spreading of such type of fake news online as well. So this was a short but an important discussion on, first of all, the social media, and then also on the role of social media, particularly in terms of the idea of online identities, and also in terms of the interaction that takes place over social media.